The stench of sweat and stale fruit followed Babatunde wherever he went. His clothes, once white, were now the color of dust. His fingers were rough, stained with the juices of overripe oranges. People avoided him. Some covered their noses as they walked past. Others whispered behind his back. "Why is he always so dirty?" a woman muttered as she picked mangoes from another seller. "He makes good money, but look at him, filthy," a young man scoffed. Babatunde said nothing. He sat behind his wooden cart, arranging bananas carefully, his eyes heavy with exhaustion. Every morning, before the sun rose, he was at the market. Every night, long after the last customer had left, he pushed his cart home, but no one knew what home meant for him. No one knew that when he left the market, he did not return to a warm house with a waiting family. Instead, he walked for miles, past the bright lights of the city, past the noise, past the laughter of those who had a place to belong. No one knew that at the end of his journey, he did not unlock a door and step into comfort. He stepped into a small abandoned shop at the edge of the slum, where a thin mat lay in the corner, where the roof leaked when it rained, where rats scurried at night. No one knew that before he could rest his tired bones, he had to bend over a tiny sleeping figure, a little girl coiled up under a worn-out blanket. His daughter, his only child. No one knew that before he ate, he made sure she ate first. That before he slept, he watched her breathe, fearing that the fever that had been burning her for days would take her away from him. No one knew that the little money he made selling fruit was spent on hospital bills, that he had stopped buying new clothes long ago, that he barely ate enough himself. No one knew that Babatunde was not dirty because he was careless. He was dirty because life had left him no choice. Babatunde sat on the cold, cracked floor of the abandoned shop, watching his daughter's tiny chest rise and fall. The fever had drained the color from her face, leaving her skin pale and dry. Her small lips quivered as she whimpered in her sleep. He reached out and touched her forehead. It was still burning. His heart clenched. He had promised her. He had promised that she would get better. But how could he keep that promise when he barely had enough to buy food, let alone medicine? A loud bang outside startled him. He turned quickly, his body tense. Drunken laughter echoed through the alley. The street boys were out again, their voices loud and reckless. Babatunde sighed, pulling the thin blanket higher over his daughter's frail body. He had once lived a different life. He had once been respected. A man with a home, a family and a future. But fate had a cruel way of taking everything at once. His wife had died suddenly. One moment she was laughing, the next she was gone. A sickness no doctor could explain. A funeral he could barely afford. And then came the debts, the endless bills, the people knocking on his door demanding money he did not have. So he had sold the house, sold everything. For his daughter, he had chosen hunger over pride, chosen sleepless nights over comfort, chosen to be called dirty rather than let her go to bed starving. But how much longer could he fight? He closed his eyes, his fingers trembling as he held her little hand. Tomorrow he would wake up before dawn again. He would push his cart to the markets, stand in the sun for hours, ignore the disgusted looks, swallow the insults. Tomorrow he would smile at customers who never saw him as human. Tomorrow he would keep pretending that he was okay because no one knew and no one cared to know. The night was long and Babatunde barely slept. Each time his daughter coughed, his heart skipped a beat. He wished he could do more for her. Get her warm clothes, a soft bed, real medicine, but all he had was his rough hands and whispered prayers. Before the sun had fully risen, he was already at the market, pushing his wobbly cart with tired arms. His feet ached from walking, but he forced himself forward. The city was waking up, and soon the streets would be filled with people. Some in expensive cars, others rushing to jobs that paid them well enough to complain about. Babatunde reached his usual spot, the corner near the busy road where he laid out his fruits. He rubbed his hands together and exhaled, ready for another long day. "Look at him," a vendor nearby whispered, "always looking like a beggar." Babatunde heard it but didn't react. He had learned long ago that responding only made things worse. A woman approached, her face twisted in disgust. "Abeg, do you ever wash your hands? How can you be selling food like this?" Babatunde swallowed the lump in his throat. I forget it," she said, shaking her head as she walked away. Shame burned in his chest, but he couldn't afford to let it show. He rearranged the oranges, forced a small smile, and called out to passers-by. Hours passed, and the sun beat down mercilessly. His shirt was damp with sweat, his body aching. Still, he stood, waiting. Then something unexpected happened. A small boy, no older than 10, ran towards Babatunde's cart. His clothes were neat, his shoes polished, but his eyes were full of desperation. "Please, sir," the boy panted, "can I have just one fruit? Just one?" Before Babatunde could answer, an angry voice cut through the air. "Junior!" A woman stormed towards them. The boy flinched. "How dare you run off like that?" The boy looked at the ground. "Mama, I was hungry." His mother grabbed his arm. "Do you think we beg for food? You are disgracing me." Babatunde watched silently, something inside him twisting. She dragged the boy away, but before they disappeared into the crowd, Babatunde picked up an orange and called out, "Madam." She turned, eyes flashing. Babatunde held out the fruit. "For him," he said simply. The woman hesitated, looking at him, really looking at him for the first time, and for a brief moment, there was something in her eyes that Babatunde recognized. Shame. She didn't take the fruit. She pulled the boy away. Babatunde stood there, watching them disappear, the orange still in his hand. He sighed, placed it back on the pile, and kept waiting because hunger did not judge, and neither did he. As the sun dipped below the horizon, Babatunde packed up what remained of his fruits. Another long day had passed, and yet his earnings barely filled his pockets. He sighed, pushing his cart home, his body heavy with exhaustion. When he reached the abandoned shop, he paused at the door, listening. The silence made his heart race. "Ada!" he suddenly called. A weak cough answered him. Relief flooded his chest as he rushed inside. His daughter laid coiled on the mat, her tiny body shivering, a net beside her, brushing damp hair from her forehead. She was burning up again. He reached into his pocket, fingers brushing against the few crumpled naira notes he had earned. It wasn't much, but it would have to do. That night, instead of eating, Babatunde carried his daughter in his arms and walked miles to a small clinic at the edge of the city. The nurses frowned at its appearance, but when they saw the frail child in his arms, their expressions softened. "She needs treatment," one of them said. "Will you be able to afford it?" Babatunde didn't answer immediately. He reached into his pocket, pulled out every last coin and placed it on the counter. "Please," he whispered. "Help her." The nurse nodded. "We will do our best." As he sat outside the clinic watching the dim lights flicker, Babatunde closed his eyes. He was exhausted, hungry, and still covered in the dust of the market. But none of that mattered. His daughter was inside, receiving the care she needed, and for the first time in a long time, hope flickered in his chest. Babatunde sat on the cold bench outside the clinic, his fingers clasped together, his heart heavy with worry. Inside, behind the thin wooden door, his daughter lay on a hospital bed, a tiny body fighting against the fever that had drained the life from her. The nurse returned after what felt like an eternity. "She's weak, but she will recover," she said softly. "She just needs proper care, food, and rest." Babatunde exhaled deeply, his shoulders trembling. Thank you so much." But then the nurse hesitated. "Sir, the treatment she needs will cost more than what you have given me." Babatunde's heart sank. He had given everything, every last coin. How could he possibly find more? Before he could respond, a voice interrupted. "I will cover it." Babatunde turned sharply. Standing there was the woman from the market, the one whose son had begged him for fruit. She looked different now, her expression softer, her eyes filled with something he hadn't seen before, understanding. She stepped closer. I shouldn't have judged you, she said, but when I saw what you did for my son, I knew I had to help. Tears welled in Babatunde's eyes, but he quickly wiped them away. I don't know how to thank you. Just take care of your daughter, she said, handing him some money. Days passed, and Ada slowly regained her strength. Babatunde remained by her side, watching as color returned to her cheeks. For the first time in months, she smiled. A weak but beautiful smile that filled his heart with hope. One evening, as he sat beside her bed, the woman returned. I have an offer for you, she said. Babatunde frowned slightly. An offer? She nodded. I run a fruit supply business. I need someone hardworking, someone who knows the trade. Come work for me. I will give you a fair wage, a proper place to live, and a chance to rebuild your life. Babatunde's mouth fell open. He had spent years surviving on the street, pushing his cart through dust and insults. Now someone was offering him a fresh start. With tears in his eyes, he nodded. I don't know how to repay you. You already did, she said with a smile, the day you gave my son that orange. Months later, Babatunde no longer lived in the slum. He had a small but clean apartment, a steady income, and most importantly, a healthy daughter, who now laughed and played like any other child. The market women no longer whispered behind his back. Instead, they greeted him with respect. And every evening, before he locked up his new shop, he placed an orange outside the door, a silent reminder of the day kindness had changed his life. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more powerful stories that remind us of the unseen struggles around us. Share this video to inspire someone today.
The past and present brightly gleams into the future, their light we share.